Hey everybody, welcome back to Veg Plot. It's the 26th of June I think today, and we're sort of really rolling into midsummer. Everything's really warming up and everything's growing, looking really lush. So I'm going to do a few jobs in the polytunnel today. We're going to take a look at the cuttings I did of the dahlias a while back and how I'm dealing with those. I'm going to take a look at the watering bags, see how they're doing, see if I recommend them. Yeah, and then little jobs that I'm going to be doing and can help you with the tomatoes and things if you're growing tomatoes. I also want to pop to the other allotment and get some comfrey to make some comfrey tea, and maybe up to the church allotment to get some nettles, because you make nettle tea as well. And I know that comfrey tea is full of all sorts of nutrients, potassium and nitrogen and stuff, and it's really good for the tomatoes, so we might be using that as a feed later on in the season as they get more into fruit. I've got about 12 ideas, I think, actually, so I'll try to list them here and here. These are things we're going to do in this video. Okay, let's go and have a look around. So the first thing I wanted to show you were these honeycomb tomatoes. They're an F1 cherry, bright orange, really sweet, really delicious. But early in the season they got scorched and I lost. A lot of the leaves went brown, so I trimmed the centres out. I mentioned it in a couple of videos ago. I trimmed the middle out here, as you can see. I've taken the middle out here, and we ended up with two stems coming up from the side shoots, and from each one of those stems we now have a truss of tomatoes forming. And it's funny actually that they're actually forming in exactly the same place on every single one of these 4 tomato plants. And it's quite amazing actually to think that from what I originally would have had is 4 trusses, I've now actually got 8, so in effect 8 plants. Now I know many of you probably do this already and grow 1 or 2 or 3 stems on your tomatoes, but I haven't ever done before, so this was quite a revelation to me. So if you don't do it, it might be worth trying it next year. Take the tips out when they're quite young, make sure you get 2 stems growing off the stem, and then train them both up, look after them, and you might end up doubling your crop yield, which is great. So that's the first thing. The next thing I want to do is pop down the end of the polytunnel, go and have a look at some other tomatoes and show how we can increase the number of plants we've got even at this late stage in the season, but also do bits and bobs to help prevent blight later on in the season. Now, as you can see, a lot of these tomatoes doing really well. We've got some beautiful little tomatoes forming on them. Like here, we've got some Alloys. These are looking really lovely, and lots of flowers. Actually, this is a new one for me. Haven't grown this before, but yeah, plenty of flowers on these trusses. So really looking forward to them. But a bit further down, the plants, as you can see, are getting quite dense, and there's an awful lot of leaf, which is good, what you want. But when you're growing in sort of a fairly confined growing space like I am, you don't want to get them too dense because they have that potential to develop late season tomato blight. So at some point it's good to start removing the lower leaves and working your way up the plants to increase airflow and light around the tomatoes to help with ripening and things. So let's have a quick look, shall we? You'll see that on this plant, for instance, this is kaleidoscopic jewel. We have a lovely tomato coming on here, but in order to increase the airflow around these plants, which are quite dense, and allow the sunlight to get to this tomato, I'm going to start pruning off the lower leaves. Now, I wouldn't do it when the plant is say about 2 or 3 foot high, but this one's now getting up to like 4 foot, I would say. So I think it's quite safe to start taking off some of the lower leaves. So I don't do this too early in the plant's growth. As I say, I've let it get to about 4 foot before I start trimming any leaves off, because I think the plant really does get quite stressed by it. I've noticed in the past, actually, if you start trimming them too early, then it can really slow up the plant's growth and formation of trusses and flowers and things. So I do tend to leave it till they're about 4 foot now, and I won't take many leaves off to start with, but it's a good idea to take these off that are below the first truss, very close, you can see that, to the stem. Quick snip with a pair of secateurs or pruners or a pair of scissors like I've got, and just dispose of that leaf. And I'll probably do that for a couple of others like this one here as well. And so once I've done that, I've got those 2 out of the way, I'll leave that plant now and just give it a chance to recover for about a week or so before I think about taking any more off. But I'll just probably go through all the tomatoes and just do this just to make some air space around the bottom, and to slowly start increasing the amount of air that can get in around the plants as they get taller. Now let's have a look at taking some cuttings, shall we? Increasing our yield of tomato plants, which can be quite fun at this time later in the season, especially if you've got room to grow them. And I'm going to try growing these outside on the allotment, and we'll just see how well they do. Normally they get blight and are totally destroyed, but some years, who knows, I might get lucky. Right, buried in the back of these tomatoes is a lovely plant, and one which I grew last year, which is called Ozark Sunrise. It's this one here. But I don't know if you can make out, if I part these bits and bobs, there's this big stem growing here, and this is what is called a sucker, and I suppose it's another sort of branch of the tomato plant really, but I don't really want it in there because it's basically causing a lot of congestion in there, and it's meaning that that plant is sending a lot of energy into a new shoot or sucker, which I don't really want it to do. I want it to develop growing upwards and create more and more trusses for me. So I'm going to take this one off, and again, if I get my scissors, you can see where this sucker joins the plant here. It's coming out off the main stem and this leaf here, so it's in like a leaf node axil. So we're just going to take it off really close to where it joins. Just a quick snip, and then you can use this cutting, you can take it and you can put it in water and it'll root. And I've got some with me and I'll show you them in a minute to show you what actually does happen if you leave them in water just for about 2 weeks as it goes. So I've got a pot here, an old milk thing full of water, so I'm just going to push that in there, and in a couple of weeks we'll have roots growing off this, and then I can plant this out on the allotment. Now it's probably best not to have it here in the polytunnel, just because it's a bit too hot and those leaves might cause too much transpiration. So I'll probably take this indoors and put it in the kitchen on the windowsill, and we'll have roots on that a couple of weeks, and then we can plant that out. But let's have a quick look at some others, just to show you what they look like. I'm just going to put these down by the door where it's a little bit cooler and not so hot. So we can take that back into the kitchen in a bit. Right, here is a pint glass of tomato plants. Look at that. Yeah, I don't know if I can take one out. I'll take one out and show you. I don't know if you can see through the glass, the little roots. You probably can't. So let's just lift one out and we'll show you. So there you go. Oops, drop that one. Yeah, those white shoots there coming out off the stem, they're the new roots, and this little cutting has just been in that water for a couple of weeks, and it's really easy. You just plonk it on a windowsill somewhere not too hot, not too bright, and they'll send shoots out quite quick. And this can now be planted up into a pot or potentially straight into the bed, as long as you look after it, just then to give yourself another tomato plant. Next thing is I want to have a quick look back at the tomatoes down here and talk about how to increase your yield, especially if you're in a polytunnel or somewhere like I am, or a greenhouse. Now I've got a couple of ways of doing this. This year I've used bamboo canes, and the trick with this is to give the canes a little shake, and you'll see that the flowers are shaking, and because the tomato flowers are self-pollinating, what this does is dislodge the pollen inside the flowers and helps to pollinate them. Now obviously if you haven't got canes, you don't have to wiggle canes. You can go in there with your finger and just tap them, and if you give the trusses a little tap, it does exactly the same thing and increases your chance of pollination, which is what you want to get a bigger crop and a better larger number of tomatoes on the trusses. So that's one good thing to do with increasing your crops as well. So while we're on the topic of increasing yield, another great crop that you can grow with tomatoes is basil. Now obviously tomato and basil naturally go together and used in sauces and pizzas and all sorts of things, and I love growing basil, so I grow lots of it in the polytunnel and in the greenhouse, and I know you can grow it outside too, but lots of people don't always pick it correctly. So I'll just show you how I do it, and I know a lot of people do this, and you probably know this already, but quite often if you see people who are new to gardening, they will take out the leaf like this and they will just harvest them like that. Now, obviously that seems to make sense, and you've got a nice big juicy leaf to eat in your salad or on your pizza. But actually what you should do to ensure that you get a really big bushy plant later on as the season develops is you should snip out your stems of your basil above a leaf node where, see, you've got these two shoots coming in here. So if we take the scissors and we just nip out the stem there, and then we can put this into water. You can either use it obviously and eat it. Obviously you can put it into water as well and it'll root, just like the tomatoes, it'll root. So I've got a glass jar there, just with some water in it, glass. And that will root. And so you want to do the same here for this one. Now just nip it out, take that, pop it in the glass. Apart from putting it in the glass also means that it stays fresh before you get it into the kitchen. But yeah, and then what happens is this plant will now grow from these shoots here on either side, and you'll get a really bushy plant. And you just keep nipping out above shoots each time, and you'll end up with a really, really bushy basil plant. So what I would do now is just go through, take that one as well. It's just keeping an eye on them and just making sure that, you know, you're just taking them out. Putting the water, as I say, will keep them nice and fresh, and it means that we can have them later on in the day or at tea time. So I'll go through all of these and do them a little bit later. But that's a really good way to increase your basil yield and make sure you get lovely bushy plants throughout the year. Right, let's go and have a look at these dahlias, the ones we took quite a while ago, and I just want to show you how they're looking and how well they've done. So here they are. Well, some of them anyway. These are the cuttings we took in that video earlier on in the year. Now they're in this bucket at the moment just to keep them watered and things, but yeah, you can see these are the big thick stem cuttings that I took, and we've got roots coming out the bottom, and these now can be divided up and we'll get extra dahlias from these. But I've also got smaller cuttings that we took here with loads of roots on. Now I don't know if you remember, but how I did this was taking cuttings off the tubers. I'll try and cut into the old video here. Taking cuttings off the tubers, which we grew in shallow trays, and then we dipped them in hormone rooting powder, and then we put them into the soil, pushed them into the soil, put plastic bags over them, we put bottles over them like little cloches, and then just left them here in the polytunnel, and they've rooted quite nicely. I'll just take these canes out. I think this one must have been the one with the plastic bags over the top of it, and we'll see if we can pop the pot off and see. Yeah, look at those lovely roots. You can see they've done really well. So what I would do now with these is just sort of gently tease these apart over a potting bench, pot them up into other pots, and that will enable them to grow on. And then I could plant them out this year and they would, I'm sure, do fine if the slugs don't get to them. But one other tip I wanted to tell you about is, I think like I've mentioned in other videos, and that is to get bushier dahlias, you don't really want one long stem like we have this one here, this long stem. So to get bushier dahlias, what you want to do is you want to take the tip out of them. So when they've got about 3 or 4 sets of leaves, if you just take the tip out like this, we won't save that this time, it's a bit too long in the season, then what this plant will do, it will send more shoots out from all these leaf axils, and basically we will get a really bushy plant. So what I would do is I would go through all these cuttings. That one's not quite tall enough yet. I would go through all the cuttings, see how tall they are, see how many leaves they've got, and see whether I could just take the tips out to encourage side shoots. So like this one here, I'll just take the tip out of that one, take the tip out of this one, and this one here, just right at the top there. So they've all got about 2, 3, 4 sets of leaves beneath them, and then these will all shoot out from here. So what I'll do is probably break these apart, not in this video obviously, pot them up, let them grow on a bit, and then eventually these will go out probably in a few weeks time. But that's how to increase your dahlias. I just wanted to show you that it worked, and how to make bushier plants so that you get more flowers later on in the season. Let's go and have a look at these grow bags, water bags, shall we? I just want to show you how well they've done and whether I think they're actually worth buying. So are they worth buying? Well, I think it depends really. It depends on your use case. Now, if you go away for a few days and you just want something to keep something slightly moist, then they're wonderful and they work really well. And these, we were away for about 5 or so days and they just kept going, drip down, and when we got back they weren't quite empty, so they worked really well for me. But I think one thing you have to be aware of is that although they've got this little regulator here which allows you to let as much water as you want through, you can have it running on constant, which is on open, if you can see that, on open. You can turn it off, or you can set the amount of milliliters you want to run through per hour. And they're set to 50 at the moment, and that's because I can come in here and water them. But on some days, the plants here have, or a couple of these have sort of got quite wilted, just because not enough water was coming through. So you'd have to set the milliliters per hour at the right amount. You'd need to test these bags before you went away. At the moment, they're just like a supplementary water drip feed for me, so I can water them every couple of days, and then the drip feed will just keep them nice and moist. So I would say they are worth buying, but do a little testing first. The other thing I did is this one at the end here, or these two I think. Basically, I filled from this water tank once, and that introduced some little microscopic bits and pieces which I saw go down the tube. Now, it doesn't seem to have affected the water going through, but you want to be careful. I've just used tap water maybe, just to make sure you don't get any blockages. The other thing was that because it was straight from this tank, I suppose, it tended to go green an awful lot quicker. So I've given it a wash out now, but yeah, they might green up if you're not using tap water. At the moment, these are looking really, really healthy, these tomato plants, and I'm really pleased with them. Although this, what is this one? This is a tumbling tom. They seem to have masses of flowers on, but they don't seem to set in any tomatoes yet. So I am hoping that underneath all these flowers, we do actually get some tomatoes. One other thing actually somebody said in a comment, and thanks very much for your comment, would be they'd love to see how these hanging baskets worked using a grass mulch around the tomatoes. Now, we tend to have a lot of weeds in our lawn, so I didn't want to use grass mulch, so I apologise for that. But what I decided to do was, and I'm not sure if I did make a little video of it, I'll cut to it if I have, but basically what I did was, you know, you can see here there's a plastic cover here, and this is made from a compost bag. And basically what I did is I cut a circle out, and then I made a little circle in the middle and a slot right to it, and then I slid that across the top of the tomato plant on top of the compost. And so in effect I've got this amazing sort of waterproof mulch which doesn't let any water out at all, but you can see under there it's full of roots and quite damp. And so yeah, if you're looking for a way perhaps to keep the moisture in on your hanging baskets, then I can really recommend this technique. Just get a compost bag, cut a circle out the same width, and then yeah, put it on top, and it'll really, really help keep the moisture in. Right, okay, next thing, I want to look at other things that you can be sowing now, because there are things you can still be sowing this time of year, and one of those things that I've been concentrating on is beans, especially dwarf beans. So here we've got a whole range of things. We've got calypso beans, which I grew on the allotment last year, and these are great for dried beans. I've got some Rognon de Coq, I've got some lazy housewife, kind of an unusual name, dwarf French bean Boston, which I'm growing up on the allotment at the moment, and they're doing nicely. There are a few gone due to slugs. And then down here, what have we got? We've got some runner beans because I need some new ones. We've got some French beans, these are Pantheon. And then we've got some Midnight Black Turtle, which are again a lovely little black bean. So as I say, thank you very much to whoever sent me those seeds, you know who you are. But yeah, if you can do successional sowing, or you're looking for something else to sow in sort of late June, July, August, yeah, get some dwarf beans in here, because you will get a crop by the end of the year, and they really are delicious. Now, I was was just going to head back in here just to show you some other things. These are the peas which I've been harvesting for pea shoots, and I'll just let them dry out a little bit, so I'll give them the water. But yeah, these, I'm still harvesting these pea shoots, and they are really, really delicious. But I should be sowing some more of them very soon too, for more pea shoots. And these were the lettuces, the sort of mixed salad which I was doing. But I've left them in the polytunnel a bit too long, they've got too hot and they've gone to seed, so I should be sowing some more of those as well. Another thing you might want to try getting in is some winter squash, if you haven't done them already. Probably a good idea to have done them already, but you can sow them, and I have done just that. I've got some crown prince. These are saved seeds from last year, and they're just coming up now, and they grow really quickly in this warm weather. And yeah, the first two of these, the others haven't sprouted yet, but yeah, when they get going they can go out too. So there's a few things you can get growing. Right, what else have we got to look at? Ah yes, cucumbers and cornichons de Paris, so all the little gherkins. Yeah, they are growing really well, and I'm really pleased with them. So what I've done this year, which I haven't done previously, is I've taken the little gherkins off from lower down on the stems on most of the plants, and also the side shoots, to encourage them to shoot up and climb up this trellis. And so that the trouble is, you see, is when you get cucumbers and they're fruiting too low down on the vine, there's kind of nowhere for them to grow, and also it means that the plant's putting an awful lot of effort into those cucumbers right at the beginning, rather than getting some good growth on and then giving you a lot more cucumbers later on up the vine. So that's what I've been doing this year, taking out, looks like there's a flower down there I've missed, but those and these here, I've been taking off the little cucumbers and the side stems around the base to increase them and increase their growth. So fingers crossed for that. Let me know in the comments if you've done that before, because it's something I've sort of shied away from in previous years, but some people have said online that it's a good thing to do. One other thing I wanted to show you, just while we're on climbing plants, and this is something I haven't grown in the polytunnel before, or a greenhouse, and that is butternut squash. So it says on the seed packet that they like warm weather. But yeah, look at these are rocketing away. They're extraordinary. So these are Hunter F1 butternut squash. I've got two of them in this homemade waterer I made, which is a tub with compost in, and then holes in the bottom and wicking fabric, and underneath is sort of a trough of water and feed. And these are growing really, really well. I have to come in and clip them in every day, more or less, just to ensure that they yeah, stay close to this bit of trellis work that I've got growing up here. But yeah, I'm expecting them to come up, and then hopefully I'll be able to grow them along, and we should get more butternut squash than I would outside, because they're always a bit frustrating, aren't they, in the UK? If it gets a bit cold, we don't tend to get many fruit. So I'm hoping this year that by growing them indoors, and you might want to try this next year, is that you get lots and lots of butternut squash, because as I say, they tend to like the heat. Right, what else have we got to look at? Oh yes, let's go and get some of that comfrey. We'll make some of this comfrey tea, which is really good for the tomatoes, and as a food actually for many plants in the garden and on the allotment. This is comfrey, and it's really popular with the bees when it's in flower. But the great thing about this plant is that it has really, really deep roots. And what they do is they go really deep into the ground, suck up the nutrients, and then store it in the leaves and things. And they're really, really good for making comfrey tea, which you can feed to your other plants. So what I do is, while they're at this sort of stage, just break off some of the stems, just take them out. And what we do is we take this back to the polytunnel, and I'll show you what I do with it, because it's really easy to make, but there are one or two little drawbacks. So on the way back from the allotment, I've got the comfrey, but I also grabbed some other cuttings here, which I've got growing at the front of the house. And this is rosemary, which is a lovely herb. Goes really well with roasts and lamb and things like that. So yeah, rosemary you can take cuttings from, so it's quite easy. So I'll show you how to do that in a minute. But the other thing I grabbed was some mint, which we've got growing by the front door. Now, if you haven't grown mint before, it's really, really easy to grow, and it's really also very easy to take cuttings from and grow more plants for next year. So let's start with the mint, shall we? The first thing to do is, if you've got a pair of secateurs or pruners or a pair of scissors, just go to your pot and cut some off, the ones that you really like, and then cut a decent length just below a leaf, and then strip the bottom leaves off. You can use these obviously in cooking or whatever you want to, or in tea, and then just put this into a glass of water. That's one I brought down with me. So if you just put that into a glass of water, and what happens, just like the tomatoes and the basil, you'll get roots coming off from where the leaves were. Just in a few weeks time you'll have roots, and then you can pot these up. So yeah, it's very easy to do. Just snip below a leaf, strip off the lower leaves and pop it into some water. And as I say, this will take approximately a couple of weeks just to root up, and then you can just pot these up into a pot. Now, it's really important with mint to make sure that you don't put it into the ground. It is so invasive. It will just grow like mad everywhere. And there you are. These again will go into the kitchen on a north facing windowsill, nice and bright but not boiling hot sun. Actually, I'm going to shorten that one down a little. Yeah, and in a few weeks these will have rooted, and as I say, can just be potted up. That's the mint. Now, rosemary. Now, semi-hardwood cuttings. It's quite good with rosemary if you pick some with this sort of lovely fresh growth on it from this year, and then you can peel it back from the stem. If you see here, this one here, and you get a little bit of heel. That's this little bit which tore off from the main stem at the bottom. Now, if you again pull back the leaves here and just strip them off, again you can use these in cooking or dry them if you want to. But if you then dip that into hormone rooting powder and plant that up into a pot, which we're going to do in a second, yeah, this will root quite readily, and you'll have some lovely rosemary plants for next year. Actually, let me just get some I took a few years back, and I'll just show you what they look like now. Right, here they are. So yeah, these are about, I think, 2 or 3 years old now. They've languished a bit from time to time, but yeah, they're looking lovely at the moment, and these are all going to go up on the other allotment. I've got several of them to make sort of a lovely rosemary bush hedge sort of thing. The bees really like the flowers and stuff, so yeah, they grow really easily. So let's have a quick look how to yeah, pot these up into some compost, and then ensure that you get some lovely new fresh rosemary plants. So all I'm using is a multi-purpose compost. Give it a little water first to make sure it's nice and damp, and then if you get your rooting hormone rooting powder, I keep getting that the wrong way around for some reason. Take your cutting, which we did a minute ago. I've dipped it in the water so it's sort of damp, and then I wiggle it around inside this hormone rooting powder so it coats the stem, you can see. And then if we just slide this down the side of the pot, tuck that in there, and then we can do several others. And then what we do is we'll put a cloche over it like we did before, and put it in the polytunnel just like this to keep the moisture in. And in a few weeks, 2-3 weeks, these will have rooted, and we'll be able to separate them and make some lovely new plants. So there we are, there we have it. There's about 12 or 13 rosemary cuttings in there, just in pots. And this will go into the polytunnel now, and yeah, we'll come back and look at this in a few weeks' time and see if they've rooted, and then we can pot them up and we'll get some nice new plants from them. Okay, so here it is. Now, I think there are different types of comfrey. I'll put it on the screen if I can remember, but some will spread like mad and others will just form a clump, and I think this is clump forming. But basically all you do is you get a container, so I'm just going to use this 2-litre milk bottle jug, and basically take it and stuff, well, you can use the stems, you can use the leaves, you can use the flowers, and just stuff them into the jug like this, as much as you can get in there. And this, then we'll add water to it, and basically it'll break down and eventually become very, very stinky. It smells horrendous. But anyway, it's really good for the plants. You do have to be careful with it in respect to the fact that it can be very, very strong. And so you need to make sure when you water your plants with it, you've watered it down. You don't just do it out neat, because it will probably harm your plants. It's learnt from experience, that is. So yeah, basically I'm just stuffing all of it into here, and then we'll top it up with water. Right, I'll get onto this, get back to you when it's as full as I can get it. Okay, that is now stuffed with all of that stem and leaf and flowers from the comfrey. So what we do now, just get some water and we fill this up as much as it will take. I need to get some more. Yeah, back. So as I say, yeah, fill it up with as much as it can take, right to the top. And then basically put it in a shady spot behind the polytunnel, I will in this case, behind a greenhouse or shed or something. Just leave it to rot down and not ferment, I don't suppose, but yeah, to break down and turn into a lovely comfrey tea. So yeah, you can see that's in there. I mean, I'd probably come out, you know, once a week, give it a little shake, shimmy it about and so on. But in a few weeks' time, this will all sort of broken down, gone a bit murky and brown and gunky looking. You may want to open it from time to time to sort of degas it, I'm not sure. But basically, it really, really does smell. So don't be put off by that. But when it's ready in a month or two's time, perhaps, you'll be able to pour little bits of this out into a watering can. And then, yeah, use that to supplement the feeding of your tomatoes and your other plants around the garden. But yeah, anyway, that's comfrey tea. Right, now let's go and empty one of these potato buckets, the new potatoes. I'm desperate to see what I've got in them. I'm going to harvest one of these Aran pilots and we'll just see what we've got. They were planted or put in these tubs on the 15th of March. So it's been just over 3 months, which is what they say they should be ready for harvesting. And I think second earlies come out a few weeks later. So, right, let's get it set up. We'll tip it into the wheelbarrow and see what we've got. Oh look, there we go, just on the surface, there's one already. Look at that, beauty, gorgeous. Right, put that over there. Right, let's tip them out, see what we have. Okay, right, look, we've got some already. Look at this, gorgeous. 1, 2, 3, 4. Put them over here. You can see them over there, but anyway, let's just separate this out. There we go. Right, I don't know, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, maybe 20 reasonable size, well, really good size actually, Aran pilot potatoes from about 4, I think. Probably put 4 in that tub, so not a bad return. And it's got some lovely beautiful soil we can use for something else as well. Just look at those, really pleased with those. There's the Aran pilot, lovely golden orbs of potato. We've still got 5 tubs left, some sort of 3 Charlotte and 2 Aran pilots. So I'll just dig those up when I need them. You don't need to dig them all up at once. Just whenever we finish these, we'll get some more out of the ground and enjoy them when they're ready. Right, I think we've got everything done in this video. That's been Chris at VegPlot. Have a lovely weekend and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.